Dude, I'm so happy we're doing this today. Thank you so much.
No problem. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
We're just spectacular. I think we have the opposite of weather right now. It's disgustingly cold outside here, and you don't have to deal with that.
Where are you coming from?
Toronto.
Oh, yeah. I used to live in Philly, which is not quite as cold as Canada, obviously, but definitely a different vibe than Texas.
I used to go to Philadelphia often. My stepdad was a truck driver. I used to go with him on a regular run down there, maybe once a month. What always sticks out, and this is probably a really bad thing to have stick out, is it's the first time I've ever seen a human being eating stuffing out of a mattress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
One
can't
of
remember
the,
exactly where it was. It was pretty downtown Philadelphia, but my stepdad was waiting for them to load his trailer or whatever, and I'm watching this homeless man eat stuffing out of a mattress, and that always sticks to my mind. Anytime anyone mentions Philadelphia, even when I see like a sports team and it's Philadelphia, that comes into my head.
you're like, it's another level of ratchet there. The homelessness is so sad. I'll never forget. It was Christmas Eve, and we were driving through the city because I have family that lived in New Jersey at the beach. And I saw a homeless man tucking his wife into bed on Christmas Eve on their bed outside. And that is also burned into my mind similarly. And when you said that, that was the first thing I thought of. It's just so crazy.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's improved. That was many years ago, but I remember I got to see a lot of American cities, and just kind of that one stood out as like, wow, what are they doing here? But
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Stirs the heart. That's for sure. Makes you grateful.
yeah. So one of the things I like to do on this podcast is get to people to give me their superhuman origin story. Basically, kind of what brought them up to today. Kind of give us the overview of who you are, how you grew up in our world, and what kind of shaped you into what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the story that you're looking for, are we going professional or personal or both?
A little bit of both, whatever you're comfortable with. This is,
Okay, cool.
like I said, you're a book, and I want to read you. So as awkward as that sounds.
Hey, life is stories, and I'm covered in tattoos, and they all have stories too. And one of my mentors slash previous bosses, we actually did a whole photo shoot called Tattoo Stories and turned it into a coffee table book. So, that we were saying that phrase more often than you'd realize. But when you're looking at somebody's ink, you're kind of reading them as a human being too. So as far as childhood stuff goes, I was born into a family with two parents, obviously. One was a Harley Davidson biker guy, and that's my father. And then my mom was still is this. We call her the Earth Mother. She's always gardening, watercoloring, taking walks, and just being grateful for the small things. And so I felt like I had a really good balance of masculine and feminine energy. Family was frayed with a divorce when I was 7. So my mom and I split off from my dad. He stayed in what we call the Bourne house, and my mom and I went to our apartment, and we called it, what did we call it? Like we wanted it to feel like a spa. And ever since, I've always wanted my apartment to feel like a spa. Fluffy's towels, good soap, stained glass window, ornaments, whimsical, happy, dinner at the coffee table kind of a vibe. Always sitting on the floor, always had the watercolors on the kitchen table. So we would just eat in the living room on the floor. And that was our style. And then from there, my mom and my stepdad met. It's actually a really funny story, so why not tell it? They met at a microfit at a gym, and my mom was hooked up to a heart rate monitor. And so when he came in the room, her heart rate shot up really high. And in what environment is your heart rate being looked at on the screen, right? And she's pretty mellow. She's kind of shy, an introverted extrovert, if you will. And he said, "Did you have a lot of caffeine?" And she said, "No, it's you," which was super, super bold. The rest is history. They've been married 15 years. I have two sisters. My sisters are young. They're still 11 and 15. So I grew up almost like halfway between a sister and a mom to them. They were born when I was 12 and 17. And I guess I'll jump into my own story here is that I wanted to get out of Pennsylvania for a long time. I was like, I need new scenery. I need to be, I'm an adventurer of the world. I need to go travel and experience things. I applied to colleges in 5 states, ended up 2 hours from home, had a great college experience, studied integrative media and graphic design. And when I was a child, I used to say I want to be an author, an artist, or a teacher. And the weird thing is now as a business coach, I get to be all three. And so I often think, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but our youngest selves are sometimes our truest selves. And so when I was 4, I could tell you kind of the direction I was going. And when we follow the hunches, a lot of really beautiful things happen. And that was one of many hunches that I follow. Have you experienced that?
Oh, absolutely. I very much subscribe to the. I guess it's a saying that from the mouth of babes, right? I think that when we're young like that, we're a little bit more tuned in with parts of ourselves that we kind of forget as we get older, or kind of get pushed maybe further to the back as we get older, and we lose that. There's. I'm not a religious person, but I do like I'm into theology, so I learn about all religions, and I always think of you know the various phrases that came through Jesus of being like a child, right? Like if you're not
Mm-hmm.
as a child, you can't come into the kingdom of heaven, things such as that. And I think that there's a lot to that. I see it in kids like yourself. I've raised younger brothers. I was their legal guardian at one point in time, as a matter of fact. I also have children who are now older. So my oldest is 22, my youngest is 15, and I started really young. Like I had my oldest when I was 18. So, I've kind of seen the development of children my entire life. And
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, we kind of know. And a lot of things are very much similar to, say, astrology. A lot of things seem to kind of run on rails in that sense. And a lot of it comes out of us when we're kids. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so I love that element looking back and kind of knowing that I sort of knew what I wanted to do only in 1993 till 2000, right? When everyone's saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" In my first 7 years of life, there's no such thing as an Instagram business coach, right? So the language for that wasn't there, but the reaching for it was there. When I was 15, my dad passed away in a motorcycle accident very suddenly. 10 years after that, I saw that there was a silver lining to that whole thing, which was he was addicted to drugs and alcohol. And had he kept on going down that road, I think it would have gotten uglier. And my silver lining, like I said, while it's absolutely sad, it's been a pivotal part of my story. And I understand that the quote, "find what you love and let it kill you," was very literal for him. And he got to go in a way that was kind of what you'd expect in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like, of course, that's how he went. And so I always joke around that I'm going to die doing some cool shit before I get old. Something that I love doing. Hopefully not. Hopefully we get to die old, right? But it's just so interesting when you actually stop and look at the stories of your lineage too. Um, but anyway, that really forced me to understand who I was on a deeper level at a young age. And that has served me and carried me. And that's a very, very, very crucial part to my story. Was I was nose to nose with, aside from what you do, who are you? That question came to me when I was very young. And so I started to realize, like, I'm an artist, I'm an explorer, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a child of God, and really allow that faith to carry me through all the seasons, right? 15, you're still half a kid. Went to school, like I said, had a great college experience. And I'll circle back to the spot where I was trying to leave Pennsylvania and say I applied to jobs, 72 jobs after college in 11 states, and ended up 30 minutes from home. And so for some reason, Pennsylvania wouldn't let me go. I was a graphic designer and a marketing gal for a ski and snowboard company. So, like, all things considered, pretty dope job. I was wearing Vans and a t-shirt to work, no ripped jeans, right? Flannels counted as collared shirts, luckily. And we got to do that for a couple of years, had some really good travels and some really good discounts on gear. I was like Patagonia head for a while there and had my dream snowboard set up, still have it, whatever. It was cool. Got to go mountain biking, got to go snowboarding and call it work some days, a couple times a year. So that was awesome. And I still hated it. And that's how I knew it was me and not the job, because I said, step back from this. The job's actually pretty cool. but I had that tugging on my heart of just like made for more, didn't want to rot in a cubicle, even though my cubicle looked like a log cabin. Our office was log cabin themed, like it was beautiful. I just knew that when I really zoomed out, what's important to me is watching the sunrise and the sunset and eating strawberries in a hammock in July and not having to be in the office, right? The simplest, smallest things point to creation, point to the creator, point to the creativity and imagination and agreed reality that is all around us. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not aligned with this at all. So I quit my job with nothing lined up. I thought that I was going to travel for 3 months with the guy that I was dating, who coincidentally lived a mile down the street from me when I got that job 30 minutes from home. And I was like, he's the reason I was home, blah, blah, blah. Not true, right? Not true. It was true for a season. That relationship started to fray and split when the traveling plans got kiboshed. We traveled for 3 weeks, not 3 months. I had quit my job. Tensions were strong. Emotions were high, right? It was one of those seasons. And I found myself headed toward a breakup with no job, with no real money coming in. I was playing the can you make rent game. And I said to myself, if you don't take this opportunity, I had my rent paid for 3 months and I had 2 more months of those 3 months. If you don't take this opportunity the next 8 weeks, this was in 2018, to do something, to at least try to not go back to work full time for someone, you're going to regret it. And so there was a lot of sitting on the floor crying and seeking clarity in that stillness piece. And thus began the journey that is now called Maximum Potency, which is my business now. Started as a health and fitness coach. I'll kind of fast forward through this season of like sifting, we'll call it. I did anything and everything under the sun to try and use my gifts and make a living using my gifts. And what I found was you don't have to monetize every single one of your gifts, but you do have to use them and bring that giving energy into the world. And you get to choose which ones you want to monetize. And so I started with health and fitness. That was a gateway drug for me in my personal growth. And so it was also the gateway drug for me in my business. About a year into coaching health and fitness online and in person, I had a hybrid business model. I felt called to teach deeper. And I had a moment of stillness where I felt in my heart, anyone can teach someone how to do a back squat and eat their greens, but you have something in your soul that other people don't have in their soul that the world needs. And so from that spirit-led place and that faith-driven place, I started to create a personal growth track to go along with this fitness and nutrition. The fitness and nutrition faded out, and the personal growth and the business growth and the lifestyle design faded in. And that brings us to the present chapter. I'm really surprised that I got that in as short as I did, even though it was still long. And we can pick apart or circle back into any of those pieces. But what drove me to create my own business was the desire to travel and to be able to get up and down from my desk, because we all have to work, but we might as well design our work in a way that suits us and allows us to eat strawberries in the sun in July in the hammock, right? And so I was like, I'll work at 11 p.m. if it means that I get to be in the pool at noon and that nobody tells me where to be for the most part. I at least get to schedule my own calls. So I'm a super grateful, happy, stoked human who loves to rip on life, and I'm teaching other people to rip on life through lifestyle design and really uncovering what's meant for them, right? And feeling into that and creating from that place. So I am Lyssa Scott, and it's nice to meet you, friend.
That was badass. It's very well done. There's an underlining theme in all of that I kind of want to point out. Maybe not so much to you, because I'm sure you know it, you live it, but to people listening, it's this following intuition, right? Like actually listening to yourself, not that negative voice in the back of the head so much as that, like the one that's kind of coming up from within the soul through the heart, that's really telling you, this is not right for you. This is not what you want. There are other paths, and being able to take that leap of faith, which, at various times in your story, you also exhibited, to do that, like maybe put yourself in that tough situation with the faith that if I follow my true self, this is going to work out.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that I ask myself all along the way is actually from one of my favorite authors and podcasters. His name is Rick Alexander. Not sure if you've ever heard of him. He's changed the name of his podcast quite a few times, but he wrote a book called Burn Your Couch. So if you need a staple to come back to, Burn Your Couch by Rick Alexander is great. He talks about if you're laying on your deathbed and you don't do this thing, is that regret going to be there with you? So basically what happens if you don't do it has been a question that I've used a lot in my journey. And so many times it's like, well, what happens if you don't work for yourself? What happens if you don't start this project? What happens if you don't at least try? You'll hear me say that a lot. And I think that that was like a really deep and powerful question for me to ask, because it means that not trying is worse than failure when the answer is yes, I have to try this, right? And the regret is actually in the not trying rather than in the result. And so that kind of alludes to the whole cliche of like, love the journey, not the destination, because we never really arrive. Like if you think you've arrived, you have. And if you think you haven't, you haven't. It's like one of those beautiful things where I believe that life is a series of staircases with landings. And there's times to smell the roses and go, hey, look, Ma, I made it. Right. And then there's times to be like hands and knees crawling up the stairs. And so it never ends. It literally never ends. It's just a matter of how content are you and how far do you want to climb? And so that kind of leads me into motivation and like drive, right? There's also a huge amount of drive that's been placed within me. And for me, that intuition is not just intuition, but tapping into God energy and Christ energy, and feeling led, feeling that there's a path laid out for me, and having faith that there's a path laid out for me. And the last thing I'll say on that note is trailblazing. Trailblazing is in my blood. I don't know if it was the dad on the Harley. I don't know if it was the mom who wanted to like create and be doing creative projects all the time, but entrepreneurship is in my blood. Going off the beaten path is in my blood. Rebel with a cause kind of a thing, right? Where you're like, well, it's not just a rebel for the sake of being defiant. It's a rebel because I want to stand for something and not against something. And I will be someone who just bitches and complains unless I do something about it, right? And it's a wild theme that has been for sure in my life. And just thank you for pulling that out and saying that. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's important. A lot of people lack conviction, right? And they lack courage. And, that idea of like being brave has kind of been co-opted by Hollywood and whatnot. We don't really see it as something that can be done on a daily basis, of like actually facing our fears, taking responsibility for the shit in our lives and the stuff that we're putting in front of us, being consciously aware of how we can circumvent the obstacles that pop up that are beyond our control, and kind of having belief in ourselves to make it through it, right? So much negative self-talk. There's so many different things coming at us that kind of beat us down on a daily basis. So when I see someone, and this is what I've always admired about you, and that part of you is infectious. Like it's magnetic. People are drawn to it, but it's also infectious in the sense that like people will catch it from you. They will see it like it's coming from an authentic place, which is why it's, translates into this resonance with people. And I think it's really beautiful. And it takes a lot of courage to people may think it's silly, but even the courage that it takes some days to throw on your camera on your phone, record that the video of you acting silly, or you acting something out to promote yourself, promote your business, or just help people get through their day, maybe inspire them in some way. That all takes courage, and to be able to follow that intuition, to be able to follow what's in your blood, all takes courage. And, if you really truly believe something, then you're going to have the conviction to see it through. And if you don't have the conviction, then you still don't really believe it. And I think there's a lot of that kind of going around in our world, where a lot of people say they believe things, but quite clearly based on the way that they act, they don't. And yeah, so that's what you have in courage and conviction right there. And that's part of magic, in my opinion.
Yes. Oh, preach. I love that so much. The idea of courage versus fear has been a theme that's been coming up a lot in the hindsight for me. Like, I'm like, ooh, there was a lot of moments of like courage or fear, which one won? And so I'm finding it really embedded into my teaching right now. I had a retreat this past weekend, and probably there was a couple of questions that were thrown out there and talked about. And the one that we got stuck on for the longest, AKA the most profound one, was when you look at your life in any category, are you operating from courage, or are you operating from fear? And what type of person do you want to be? And you see this happen a lot, especially in relationships, right? People are scared of fill in the blank, scared of being vulnerable. I'm scared of committing. I'm scared of what if it doesn't work out? I choose to be a person who operates from courage and possibility and innovation as opposed to fear and what ifs and stagnancy. And that's like a true lifestyle change that a lot of people don't even talk about. Like beyond every successful person, or behind rather, is a decision and a ruthless commitment. And you can't have a ruthless commitment without courage. And so that's the whole thesis of that course that I put out earlier this year, Iron Will and Armor, is if you don't have an iron will, a ruthless commitment, fear's going to strike you in the heel sooner or later, right? It doesn't take that many steps outside the comfort zone before you're like, oh shit, I'm scared. Like those moments of just like, you kind of want to puke a little bit, and you have to really like harness your mind and say, do I want to operate from courage or fear? Because there's a lot of people operating from fear. This whole world is wired for fear. And going back to biblical stuff, I mean, be in the world, but not of it. That scripture always comes up for me. It's like, if you're going to be in this, then that's what it's going to be. Is fear and guilt and shame are behind almost all of our media, all of our, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole too deep right now, but just all I'm saying is you're in an environment that without a conscious decision will kind of take you over and tell you what to do if you don't tell it otherwise. Have that backbone.
We're seeing a whole fuck ton of that in the world right now, aren't we? I talk about this just to avoid censorship, the current affliction. I call the joy. It's my way of co-opting what's going on. Some people are getting lollipops for the joy. Some people are remaining sugar-free. However, exactly what you're saying is exactly what's happening. Is psychologists at really high levels have studied fear for a very long time, right? Like we understand that it's a very very high on the list of things that motivate us, either for better or for worse, right? So they understand the study very well. You can't think that they understand it that well and aren't going to use it in some way, i.e. propaganda, psyops, things like that. Obviously, I think a lot of us can see one way or another, we're kind of living through something like that right now, where there's a lot of fear going around out there, and a lot of people not knowing how to react to it, and so kind of throwing darts, knives, bombs at each other because they don't know how to process this emotion. And quite obviously, our governments, our news mediums are not helping in this sense. I like to just kind of touch base with your locale. I think you're splitting time between two places, but I think you're in Texas now.
Yeah, so we actually traveled full time last year from I haven't had a month where I didn't travel since January 2020. We'll just say it that way. And now we are settled for 1 year, to be determined whether it's short term or long term than that. But about a year and change here. We'll probably be in Texas. We've got sites on Baja California, Cancun, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Tennessee. So changing latitude, changing attitude. I've never lived in a warm place in the winter. So as shallow as that sounds, I feel way more inspired and willing to give and show up and serve. And that's valuable to me. It's not about necessarily just the palm trees and the feet in the sand and the things that come with warm weather, but actually, like, where do you feel the most inspired and alive and charged, and not in that fear, doubt, shame, guilt cycle, right? And so there's nothing quite like a gray Sylvania, that's what I call it in Pennsylvania in the winter, a gray Sylvania day to kind of like keep you right where you're at, right? Like, I don't really feel like doing anything, so I'm just going to stay here. And it goes back to that theme of break the stagnancy. So whether that means an environmental change, a habit change, a mentality change, like, do what you got to do to make moves, because like Bob Dylan, you get busy living or busy dying, right? And so it's just in, yeah, I don't know where we're going to be, but somewhere warm, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is warm, so you're all right there. And so far, in terms of all the rules and regulations and everything, they seem to be a little reasonable. I'm glad to hear that you've been able to travel, because obviously that's become very difficult over the last couple of years. And I agree with what you're saying. I think that there is something to going through the seasons, like living through a winter. I notice something different in people who kind of grow up in these northern climates where you do have the four seasons versus
Mhm.
people who don't, there's almost like a humility that our winters give us that,
Yes.
but I do think that being able to carry that out into the world is also kind of nice. You don't have to just stay there just because, they built some character. You can move. And, I personally haven't moved far, but I've moved a lot, like changed
Mhm.
houses a lot in my life. And I always see the kind of like rebirth, Phoenix from the ashes type scenario that plays out when you do get to do that. So when you say stagnance, like it's something I talk about, whether it's an energetic stagnance or even a physical stagnance, we need to keep ourselves moving. And if we don't do it, if we don't choose things that will keep us moving, our environment tends to throw things at us that'll make us move. Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends what direction, right? But it also like inertia, like how versatile are you? It comes from life throwing the curveballs and you learning to run with them. And that's been 100 times over, right? Somebody was talking to me this morning about people who are hesitant to start their business or hesitant to start their fitness journey. And they say, oh, life is happening right now. And she said, I tell those people, good, because if life's not happening, you're dead. Now find a way to start your fitness journey or your business journey or your personal growth journey or whatever it is that you're trying to start. Like, I'm all about honoring timing and seasons and is this a good time or is it not? But at some point, you just have to go for it. And you just have to say, let's do this thing, right? I don't care how slow I go, maybe is the attitude in those circumstances. But the changing of the seasons, I lived through it 27 times. And this is the first winter that's not really winter. It's like 50 degrees here, 30 degrees at night. And it has me feeling like I don't know what month it is, right? I'm like confused. It's almost like jet lag, but with the seasons. And I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit disoriented. Like this is weird. I still haven't really had to pull out certain winter clothes or certain mittens and hats and things that I would normally be wearing every day right now in January. And it's been humbling and also something that I miss a little bit, right? In a weird way. So we actually went home to Pennsylvania for 3 weeks for Christmas, New Year's, and I was joking around, all right, I got my 3 weeks of winter, like I'm good now, right? But
Yeah.
for real, it made Christmas feel like Christmas and it made New Year's feel like New Year's. And I think there's something to be said for the observation of the passing of time. So in San Diego, it's 73 and sunny pretty much every day. It's like a time warp. Like 10 years could go by and you might not notice, right? And it's one of those crazy, wild things. So if nothing else, it's like good for documenting, like, oh, time has gone by, right? My birthday's in the fall, and it was always the weekend that the weather changed from summer to fall was my birthday weekend. And I would just be like, oh, cool. We're still circling the sun, in fact, right? It's just funny to think about.
Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, like I said, it's humbling because it keeps everything in perspective. And I think that there's almost like a allegorical, metaphorical significance to it that is good for us to keep in our mind, because even it doesn't really matter what you're doing, you always reach points where it's like plateaus or stagnants, or you're maybe less inspired or just not moving the way that you were before. And like I said, if you don't shake it up, something's going to shake it up for you,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think that in a way it kind of programs you to run on those cycles too, which kind of keeps you in a healthy place, because you are constantly doing that transition or regeneration, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That said, season defective disorder is real. And
Mm-hmm.
the lack of sunlight, the vitamin D or whatever other properties that we get from the sun that we maybe don't have words for yet, other properties that we get from the planet that we maybe don't have words for yet,
Mm-hmm.
obviously tend to go to sleep over the winter. So it kind of puts us in a place where, we feel like hibernating. Like you said, we don't
Yeah.
feel like doing anything. So I remember even going to British Columbia. It's a lot milder there than it is here in Ontario. And so being there over the winter, I was like, I can wear a t-shirt, like I'm not like the sun's out and I feel good. Like this, it totally feels different. And so yeah, like I think, it's an amazing experience, amazing thing to be able to see the world from different places and be able to take on different viewpoints, because it really helps you kind of appreciate what you've already seen a little bit more, or see meaning in it a little bit deeper. And I also think that there's something to what you're saying in terms of like where we're born in our like homeland, if you will, or our hometown or whatever that concept of home actually was to us. I think that there's, much like spirituality, we don't really have words for a lot of things, or there's a lot of different terms for different things. I think that there is some type of connection that we feel to our place of birth, and I think that spending time away from that is valuable, but I see it in just about everybody. You always kind of get called back. What's odd is I was born in a town that I've never actually lived in. Just the town that I was living in at the time I was born didn't have a hospital. So, however, anytime I go to that town, I'm like, I kind of like it here. What's up with it? Strange, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I was born like a few towns over as well, and I can't stand the town that the hospital was in, but I love the town that I was like raised in. So it's just funny how those things are. And something that just came up a little bit off topic, but not too far of a stretch while you were talking was, the concept of just like reminding ourselves that we're human, or remembering, right? Is a term that you hear a lot, is like our pilgrimage home in a lot of ways is this whole entire life. And so when you think about unlearning or remembering or stripping away of things that God added along the way, right? Conditioning, programming, all that stuff, the coming home of our spirit and our soul. And regardless of what you believe about incarnations and whether we have one lifetime or multiple lifetimes, I think there's a universal sound, like Tyler Childers references it in his song Universal Sound, that we all are in tune with. And that song seems to be a little louder in the place of birth, right? For some reason, things feel a little bit more simplistic or familiar, or I don't know, you're just like in a different state, right? You don't have to look up in GPS where the grocery store is. Maybe something as simple as that. I took for granted. And when we were traveling, I got travel fatigue. And I remember saying to my partner, Savi, I don't want a GPS to go to the grocery store. I just want to go. Like, we take for granted that we even know our way around the place, and just the amount of time that takes. And that was a theme of this year too, of be more human. Reebok's slogan is be more human. And they released that campaign somewhere along the line of CrossFit becoming a mainstream thing. About 2008 to 2010, it was growing. And then by 2010, everyone kind of started to know what it was. And by 2020, it sort of surpassed it, I believe, surpassed its peak. As much as I love it, I don't think it's really a growing sport. I think it's like a niche down sport, which is great. But that campaign, Be More Human, was about finding your physical edge through hard work and physical work. There's a lot of things right now in my life that I keep doing to remind myself, like, you are your home, right? And so I keep on getting in cold plunges, keep on sitting in saunas. Today I sat in the sauna with a hoodie on, which is something I've never done before. Like, to tell myself, like, you've got you. The seasons are a form of that remembrance, or that waking up to the fact that you've got you is, hey, it's winter again and you're still here, right? So the seasons, the cold plunge, the hot, the breath work in some instances makes you so lightheaded that you have to really rely on the floor that you're laying on, or the seat that you're sitting in, or the traveling and navigating and remembering, hey, no matter where I am, I can take home with me. And not really finding that in external things, right? It's not about the furniture or the clothes in the suitcase. It's not about the essential oils or the supplements in the closet that I think are an extension of me for some reason, right? I'm like, this is my lifestyle. This is what I do. Who are you when I put you in cold water? Who are you when I put you in a 180, 190 degree sauna for 30 minutes? Like, who are you then? And that CrossFit stuff gets you there real quick too. You're in the trenches of a workout. You can't really breathe. And someone's asking you to move a barbell around. You remember who you are real quick. And so I just like love that dusting off, right? It's the opposite of what you were saying. The stagnancy. It's like, stay close to who you are at your core. Aside from what you do, who are you? It goes back to that. And like, I find that to be the most cleansing, liberating thing in the whole wide world. Like, I'm addicted to those experiences that make your heart beat a little faster, even when you're uncomfortable. It's like a certain kind of pain that's just really worth it, And that can be found in life circumstances too. It just takes longer. it's like the fastest way is through the physical body, but it's happening on all planes all the time, on the spiritual plane and the mental plane and the this, that, and the other thing. It's just so incredible. So I don't know what I'm rambling about, but I needed to get that out. So thanks for holding the space.
No, all good. It's it's not indifferent from the way that people use drugs, right? Like people drugs or
Accurate.
alcohol, right? Like it's kind of the same thing, and just a kind of healthier way. It's kind of like our own natural way to do it. I do this thing like the house that I live in. We have a full basement bathroom. It's nice and cold in the bathroom. Our water is illegally hot, so I can fill that thing up with like just about to like boil me like a frog water and then crawl in that, and the whole bathroom, because it's such a small space, just fills up with steam. So I can basically do like a cross between a sauna, a hot water immersion, and a steam room all at the same time. And just the breathing that it requires for me to just not instinctively crawl out of it, you know what I mean? Like if I let myself, my body will crawl out of it. That's just what my body wants to do. This is too hot, get out. But if I keep my breath work going, I keep myself focused, I sing. That's one of my ways to do it. But I've encountered experiences where, like I have experimented with things like DMT. I've had DMT drips from these type of experiences. It reminds me of people using Kundalini yoga and having psychedelic type experiences. You can invoke these things out of your natural body. And I think this is, we've touched on religion a couple different times. This is kind of our pathway to God, if you will, is to be able to use our natural technology, these bodies that we're blessed with and that we have, in such a way that we connect to something that is clearly animating everything around us that we haven't quite put a scientific term on yet. But I think that the people who are happy in life seem to have connected with something like that, whether they call it God, whether they call it source, whether they have, Tom, Bob, or Jill as the name of that God, doesn't seem to matter. But it's the idea of understanding that you're connected to your environment, you're connected to the people within it, and you're connected to something that is bigger than the body that you have, but also respecting the body that you have as this beautiful playground to explore the world with, and respecting it as such. Decorating it, if you will, is I think a beautiful and important thing. Remembering to be human. There's so many of these things, especially technology, bringing it into our life, that kind of we want to separate ourselves from nature. We want to separate ourselves from our own humanity. We're almost being conditioned to believe our humanity is bad in some type of way, where we really need to kind of hold on to that and fight back against that, because that is absolutely not true, and we will miss out on all the magic of life if we subscribe to it.
I was just heavily resonating with everything you just said. I'll tell you what my scientific term for it is. It's called too beautiful to be a coincidence, right? And as long as we're on that wavelength, we can have a conversation. And so that's like one of my core beliefs is like, I don't have to have it all figured out. For me, in my context of my brain and my connection, it's a very personal relationship, and that's what I vibe with. But dude, whatever gets you there. Like I am also that person that's like, this is what's real for me. And I would love to hear about what's real for you and see where we're a Venn diagram, right? Where we have that overlap, and let's connect and go in from that spot, because the human experience, guess who makes money when you believe it's wrong, when you believe it's something to be changed or altered or upgraded or dealt with. It's all just follow the money, right? And what you were saying about, I forget your exact analogy with the candy, but it again, follow the money. And so when we can come into a beautiful acceptance of like, this sounds so stupid, but it is what it is, and let it be what it is, that's really like an opportunity to become, I don't even have the words for it, an opportunity to become what you are, which the irony is you don't have to become anything. You just have to be with it. Right. And so what you were saying about the natural technology that we have, that was one of the greatest phrases I've ever heard. That was amazing. It's like, I always use the analogy of shuffling the cards in the deck being our brain, right? We reach for things that shuffle the cards or make us forget there's cards. There's two very distinct camps. And so drugs, alcohol, all the biohacking stuff, all of the near-death experiences maybe you've ever had, all of those physical shocks to the body, whether it's sprinting or getting in the ice bath or both, right? You do physical activity and then you get in an ice bath. Or if you're like me, you go from the sauna to the ice bath, and you're slowly narrowing the window of 5 minutes to 1 minute to 30 seconds to like sprinting through the gym to get in there, right? all that stuff shuffles the deck. The question is, do you want to shuffle the deck, or do you want the deck shuffled for you? Like what you were saying, the life stuff will shuffle the deck for you. And then there's a point, and this is where I believe like drugs and alcohol stop being, not that they're healthy from like a physical perspective necessarily, like most of them are toxins to the body, but I believe there's ways to be with substances that are actually helpful when used in moderation, right? And when they stop being helpful is when we're using them to ignore the cards, to numb out. And same thing with technology, with your phone, with your television set, with your even music. Are you using it to tap in, or are you using it to numb out? And so it doesn't matter. Caffeine, are you using it to keep going and not feel the pain, or are you using it to be alert and be present? It's just so interesting. Like literally everything has that shadow side. And it's something powerful happens when you wake up to that, and you wake up to the fact that everything that you do has an intention, right? And I'm on a journey this year of a full year sober. And so as of May 5th, May 6th, the day after Cinco de Mayo, y'all had up some bourbon in the Smoky Mountains. I just said, what happens if I take out every substance? Caffeine, I don't count as a drug because it just makes me more me. I joke around. But I don't consume more than 200 milligrams a day of caffeine. Like it's a moderate dose. And so zero drugs for a year, no mind altering substances, no nothing. Right. And so of course I found my way into the ice bath this year, because what the heck else was I going to do? I joke around. I'm like, well, I was just playing with the toys I had, you know what I mean? And so it's just been super interesting. Highly recommend a year sober to anyone who feels like maybe they've been using these things to numb out and they just want to hit the reset button. And that's not me saying I'm never going to have bourbon again. That's not me saying I'm never going to enjoy a glass of wine again, right? It's just like, hey, for right now, I want to see where I can go with another path. And it forces you to get creative. It forces you to look at things. There's a certain something that you were saying people are putting in their arms at this very point in time. And I said, I don't want to get it. And my stepdad said, if you don't want to get it, then why are you drinking alcohol? And that's a toxin too. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to do this. So like I took it out and I was like, this is a flex of integrity, right? But it's given me so much more than just a flex of integrity. It's really opened a lot of doors for me to just like be with myself and not be distracted. Curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, it's very important, like we may not think that we're dependent on certain things that we are dependent on. So to like take breaks from everything, I think is important,
Yeah.
Pretty much anything that we do, we kind of need to take a break from sometime, and drugs and alcohol included. And like I was saying, there are ways through the natural technology to tap into those same states anyways. Everyone's heard of like the runner's high. It's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ice baths does the same thing that I was talking about with my experience with the bath. And like I'll expand on that. I literally, like, I can remember there was a Pussifer song had just started. I was breathing really heavily to keep myself from crawling out of the tub. And I went away for a while. I was gone for a good 6 weeks. Pretty sure I went to another dimension. I had a family. I had a job. I had a car that I would drive to the job. I had things that I would do when I'd come home with my family. Everything was normal. 6 weeks went by. Came back out of that. I'm still sitting in the tub. And it's the same Pussifer song playing. So we don't necessarily need these things, but they're tools, right? They're tools that we have available to us that can be used, and we're the user of the tool. Therefore, it's our responsibility in how we use them. I could use a hammer to build a house or fix your shelf. Could also use a hammer to really hurt you.
Yeah.
But that's up to me. So I think that that's really important. One of the things I think is most important in life is being able to find inspiration. And so I think that anyone who is like in a place where they can inspire others should step up and do that, which is one thing I love about following your channel, is that you're very inspiring. I know there's probably a lot of people out there who feel that, they bump into it, they watch one of your videos, they get that little bit of extra pat to go out there and work on their business or work on themselves or work on their fitness, because I remember when it was mostly just fitness stuff, right? And it was the same type of thing. but it is that concept of leading by example as well. You know, like I kind of do the same thing while I'm going through these things. I'm sharing them with other people so that they can see that like I'm really doing this. You know, it's not just something I'm talking about. I'm not just on a soapbox or a platform screaming down at you, hey, you should do this. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. It's working. You want to join? You want to try it? Here's all the reasons it works. So inspiration is really important. A lot of people will forget what you said, but they're not going to forget how you made them feel. So that's you know, really important. So I probably have to let you go, but before I do, I just want you to kind of give some general advice in that vein to people who are maybe, you know, not quite sure of what to do with all the joy kicking around, and or maybe are torn between this lollipop and sugar-free life, or maybe just, you know, the regular everyday life is still there, right? So what would you say to help people remember what they are?
Yeah, to help them remember. There's 2 or 3 things coming up, so I'll go through them each. Rip on life is my motto. Rip on life is another way of saying carpe diem, or bloom where you're planted, or do what you can with what you've got where you're at. And if I believe that we all have growth ahead, regardless of how much growing we've been doing, to look at yourself, to close your eyes and look at yourself in a mirror, right? So you close your eyes, you look at yourself in the mirror, you picture you on one side of the mirror and your reflection on the other, and you let that reflection become you 6 months from now. And you ask him or her, hey, what do you have to say to me? Hey, where are we at? What are we doing? And you're consulting with your future self, right? Meditations like that, where you're really tapping into like, hey, who do I want to become? And then I'm a super, super rational person, as creative and like visionary and dreamy as I can get. My After the daydream is over, it's a snap back into reality quick. And it's like, cool, how do I reverse engineer that? So if you're looking for a more peaceful life, I'll just use a really simple example here. Hey, I want to become more peaceful. You've identified a quality that you want to step into. Well, what's one thing that the peaceful version of you does every day? Start to embody that way of life. Does she wake up and meditate for 5 minutes? In my case, I have a grandmother right now who's in the hospital dying, and I put myself in her shoes the other day and I thought to myself, what would I want more of? And it was sunrises and sunsets. And so maybe the more present version of myself watches the sunrise or sunset every day for 10 minutes without a phone or without a whatever, even if it's through the window, right? It doesn't need to necessarily be outside at a park. Like, do what you can with what you've got where you're at. And so for me, I'm on a journey of becoming more present. And so I took the drugs and alcohol out, and then I took some of the busyness out, right? I'm seeking stillness before movement and just starting to embody that. Like, if there's I think we all have a quality we want to grow into. And so really taking that and just saying like, what's my next step? And after you're someone who, let's think about this, me watching the sunrise most days requires me to be up early. So what the heck after the sunrise is, right? Maybe then I go for a walk. Maybe then I make some oatmeal. I don't know what it is, but what's the next thing you want to cultivate? For me, it's someone who reads more. I'm going to get up and read and watch the sunrise. Okay, cool. Then what? And it builds and it builds and it builds. That's the first thing that I would say is just rip on life, whatever that looks like for you, where you're at. Reverse engineer that quality that you want to develop in yourself. And the other thing I would say is just stay open to possibility. Our imagination is such a gateway. Like, the difference between imagination and fantasy, right? The difference between imagination and fantasy is imagination is bringing to mind what is not in front of you. Fantasy is believing that something is real when in fact it's been proven that it's not real. Huge difference there. Where can your imagination take you? And I'm getting back into visualization here. So if you're not catching the theme, it is visualize and as a man thinketh, if you will. There's a short audiobook on YouTube called As a Man Thinketh, is what I'm getting at here. Change your thoughts, change your life, and stay open to possibility from God, from friends, from whatever is going to come your way, is to not be closed off, but to be open and present, is what I would say.
Beautiful. I teach this thing that I call magic, but it's really just, you know, my own modified version of life coaching. And my, you know, main 3 focuses are imagination, will, and conviction.
Oh, I love this.
It's kind of funny because you've literally talked about all 3 of those over the course. So you're officially a magician, and I thank you very much for taking the time to talk to everybody today. Because yeah, you're golden. So this has been amazing. Thank you.
Yes, rip on life, friends. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm so grateful. Would it be okay if I tell them about my upcoming retreat?
Please do.
You might have to chop this out because I don't know if you want me to ask you if you can be
No,
okay.
no,
But
no, it's all good. This is all real. There's no edits except for when I edit the promos in the middle, but we'll get there.
no worries, no worries. So just so you guys know, I one of the biggest parts of my work right now is not just to sit on Instagram and exist through squares, but to form in-person connections and experiences with people. And that's been ever since I was a teenager, something that I wanted to do. And last year, finally started hosting retreats. So the next one, they all have themes. I never do the same retreat twice. Couldn't if I tried. But this one's called the Wild Warrior Retreat. And just some of the things that we're going to be doing are picking berries, setting off paper lanterns, acro yoga, slacklining, warrior workouts, which are a mix of kettlebell, dance, meditation, and intuitive flow. Taking photos, like you'll come home with portraits of yourself on the retreat, all organic meals. We're going to be howling at the moon, bathing in the sun, just living life. And so you are more than welcome to come to that. The details, I can give you the link for the show notes, but the details, if you want the details, they're the top link in my bio. It's the easiest way to find them over at Maximum Potency on Instagram. All are welcome. If you're hearing this, you're invited. And we do have like about 8 more spots open, and the retreat is in May of 2022. So I'm stoked, and it'll be in Vermont. I guess I should also say that it'll be in Vermont. But I'm really excited to facilitate that experience for people. So I just wanted to tell your followers that that's happening. And if you guys are hearing this before February 10th, you do get $200 off for the early bird discount. So just so you know, come check it out.
I'll probably get this up tomorrow for you and I, but for the listeners, it'll be today. So
oh, cool. I love it.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you once again. That is beautiful as well. We do need to get together, and as great as this technology is for helping us connect, there's a next level. There's levels to this shit. There's a next level to that shit too. So bravo to putting something together like that. It's really awesome.
Heck yeah. Come be more human, right? If I could use that slogan, I would, but I'll let Reebok keep it.
You can do it. Nobody likes Reebok anymore. I'm not kidding.
It's noble.
USC.
It's noble
Everybody
now. So funny. So funny. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Well, bye everybody at home.